Hey, thank you very much for joining us tonight here at the Dearborn Public Library. I'm glad to welcome Alia Hanna Habib here. She's a vice president and literary agent at Skinner Company in New York. But first, we've got a couple of announcements. Format for time will be about 45, 50 minutes or so where we'll be talking. Lee and I will be talking, and after that, maybe about 10 minutes, 15 minutes for Q&A. And she'll be able to find what's after. So be sure that it's a great book, especially if you're a nonfiction writer, period. It's a great book. So I just wanted to let you know that we've got some great talks coming up. We've got in April, talk with the author of New Parks and Recreation TV show book. If you're a fan of NPR podcast Planet Money, we'll be talking with the host of that in Maine. Lots of other great programs, so be sure to check our website, dearbornlibrary.org. So Ms. Habib is, as I said, is vice president and literary agent at the Skinner Company, where she represents many authors, MacArthur Fellows, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists, National Book Award finalists, and numerous New York Times best-selling authors such as Judy Badelon, Irv Emery, Nicole Hannah-Jones, and Clayton Snap. And as I said, it's a great book. I do enjoy it. So please welcome Alia Hanna Habib. There. Testing. All right. I'm a booker, and it sounds like, from what I've heard, you are.
I am. I
Yeah.
don't think you could do this job if you weren't. And I think there's so many things I wish people understood about publishing, about the people that work in publishing. And we can often seem like these faraway gatekeepers, but I don't think you could ever decide to work in the industry if it's not coming from a deep place, which is really loving books and wanting to be around them all day and talk about them all day. It never gets old for me.
Yeah, for me, it was knowing all the presidents when I was in kindergarten, and even adult books and summer reading program.
Same. Yeah, I also think that I grew up I'm of a generation where my parents didn't restrict what I read, and I also came of age before the big boom in YA. So my reading was essentially raiding my mother's bookshelves and reading things that were incredibly inappropriate for a 13 and 14-year-old. But I actually don't think it was a bad thing. I think that I learned a lot about the world.
Well, I got a little pushback when I checked out John Cheever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just, you also talk about when you grew up, you went with your dad who worked as a bartender,
Mm-hmm.
and you sort of got the sense of the room, or at least dealing with people.
Yeah, I think I don't give my dad enough credit. My mom was a reader. My dad wasn't. He was a bartender, and I ever saw him read a book. But again, I think I grew up in a generation where we didn't really have babysitters or daycare, so I would go with my dad to his bar during the summer and just hang out there all day. And the way I amused myself was I'd bring a stack of books to read, and but I think I also got from him an ability to kind of sit in any room and talk to the people there, and also I think that it gave me a certain comfort with being a reader in public. You're at a bar, like you're reading a book, you have to be really being a reader if that is what you're going to do.
Yeah. Well, I guess someone has emotional intelligence.
I don't credit myself too much, but I hope that I did. I think that I should credit my parents for that. But I think that, yeah, I think that also I'm an only child. And I think that when you're an only child, you're forced essentially to interact with adults all day. And I have this real love for only children now, right? I immediately can cross someone as an only child. And when I meet an only child, oh, you're an only child too. That's the way you interact with adults differently. I think you're an only child. And I think I use that in my work. So.
Well, yeah, that was my,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
I was leading towards, that what you read the proposal, you read the manuscript, and you say, and you see, hey, I really, that's smart, or that's.
Yeah, yeah, took them and asked what qualities should one have in oneself if you want to be a literary agent? And there's, love of reading or being aggressive about negotiating. Those things are all true. But I actually think a way to know if you have the right personality is if you're the person who always has a strong opinion and you want to convince everyone that you're right. Like you go out with your friends to the movies and you leave, everyone's like, what do you think? Like, oh. And I'm like, no, I'll tell you what I thought. And then and I'll tell you why I'm right. Or something, oh, what should I order on the menu? Like, I'll tell you what to order. I know what you should get. And I think that's a classic agent personality. It's very funny when you go out for dinner with a group of literary agents, because we're all like that. It's having 5 people like that means that's it.
You never get an order.
Yeah. Sure. But yeah, having a certain courage in your convictions, I think, is a good quality in an agent.
Well, you have to, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just, maybe that's a good thing, describe the roles of an agent.
Right. So, yeah, and I don't like to assume that people know what an agent does. So there are lots of different roles in publishing, and one of the things that drives me crazy about any movie or TV show about publishing, if you've seen it, they're wrong. The way they show our jobs is so wrong. They often make all the roles look the same. So my job structurally is I am kind of the first person an author deals with when they want to publish a book. So let's say you're interested in writing a book and you want to sell it. You don't want to self-publish, which is a different route. You want to sell it to a major publisher. Most major publishers don't want to deal with submissions directly from authors because there's just a huge volume issue. They would just be only overloaded with submissions from all different types of people doing all different types of books. There has to be some sort of vetting mechanism. They also want to deal with someone when they're doing a publishing deal who's an expert in publishing deals. They don't want to negotiate directly with an author. That's where I come in. So my job as a literary agent is to find the talent, to find the writers that might be of interest to a publisher, and then to represent those writers in querying publishers with their books. So I have my own specialty as an agent. I primarily do nonfiction, but there's literary agents who do all different types of things. Even at my own agency, there's someone who does sci-fi and fantasy. There's someone who does literary fiction. My boss who founded the agency is a thriller expert. He represents John Grisham. We have all these different specialties. And that's part of it too, is we're all have our little lanes, and therefore we know which publishers and which editors are interested in particular types of books, what types of books they're looking for. So that when these publishers hear from us, we literary agents, they take it seriously. They say, oh, Alia Hanna Habib, she knows what kind of books we like. We should respond to her email. So I represent authors. So if you write a book and you're interested in having it published, you would try to find an agent, someone like me, to represent you in trying to get it published. The next role is an editor. An editor works at a publisher. I don't work at a publisher. I work at an agency. So I sell books to editors. They're the ones who decide, hey, I'm going to publish Dan's book about his life as a librarian, and they decide, they'll make you an offer, and my job would be to negotiate that offer and try to get you the best deal possible. And throughout the process of publication, my job is to be your representative, but also your advocate. Let's say your editor isn't getting back to you about your manuscript, and you're really upset about it. Your agent's job is to get in there and say, hey, editor, let's get back to Dan, or let's say your publisher gives you a jacket that you don't really love. The agent's job is to get in there and say, hey, can we go back to the drawing board and do a different jacket? So an agent's job, in part, I always say, is to have the difficult conversations with the publisher so the author doesn't have to. And again, that gets back to what I was saying about publishers don't want to have a direct business relationship with authors. They want to have a creative relationship with you, but they don't want to deal with like your cranky emails about the stuff you don't like. And I'm the one who sends the cranky email. And then there's, at the end of there's lots of different jobs in publishing, but the big ones that you usually see are the agent, first stop, the editor, second stop, and then the publicist, which is usually the one who would say, contact the library and say, hey, I have an author coming to town. Would you like to do an event with them? The publicist is the one who gets the word out. So often, again, if you see like a publishing job on TV, one person is doing all these jobs, but it's three distinct roles. So if you hear an author on NPR, I'm not the one who got them there, and it's not the editor who got them there, it's the publicist who got them there, and they come in at the end of a book website.
Yeah, now, for instance, when I set up these talks, I frequently talk to publicists.
Yeah.
And,
unsung heroes of book publishing.
well, you work at them.
I had a really unusual path, and most people who become literary agents start out as assistants to literary agents. If you work in the industry and you want to sound like you know what you're talking about, you say that they worked on the desk. So you start out, as a young person that's working on the desk of Alia Hanna Habib. Like that's what it's called. You're the assistant to Alia Hanna Habib. That's how most people start out when they become an agent. I started out in a totally different way. I started out as a book publicist. So at the end of this pipeline, I was the person calling up libraries and saying, can you have my author do an event? Calling up bookstores and calling up NPR. And I liked working in books and I liked working with authors, but I didn't love being a publicist. You seem surprised.
No.
Why?
It's a hard job.
They're all hard jobs, but a publicist was hard in a way that didn't work for me. But yeah, I agree with you. And what I didn't love about it is you don't really get to pick what you work on. You kind of just give in, hey, you have to publicize, take it from me, and this is the dumbest book idea I've ever heard, but I have to get
or a book on fishing and you know nothing.
Exactly. Or a book you might disagree with the book strongly and have to be out there and, shilling for someone that you think is reprehensible. Thankfully, I never had to do that, but it happened. And I really increasingly I wanted to have a stake and a say in what books I was a part of putting into the world. But when I started out in the industry, I didn't know the difference between the different jobs. I didn't know the difference between a publicist and an editor and an agent. I just took the first job I was offered. I was a working class kid. I needed a job. And I kind of got stuck. I kept getting promoted as a publicist. And took a detour, went to grad school. I got promoted some more as a publicist. And when I was in my early 30s, I thought I really want to transition. I want to maybe do something editorial. So I was already an ad publisher then, and I talked to the head of the editorial department, the editor-in-chief of the publisher where I was working, and I said, I'd really like to maybe start editing.
Oh.
And they told me I was too old.
You're not.
A little older now. I was 31 at the time. And in a way it was a gift. I was mad. I also blame this for the fact that I married the wrong person because I was told I was too old at 31. And that same year, I got married. And I was like, oh, I'm old. Like, I ended up, I really like this person should have paid for my divorce. But I felt like the door was closed to me. It was too late for me to become an editor. And at 31. And I didn't know what to do, and I did a publicist on a book that did pretty well, and the agent took me out to lunch to thank me, and I don't know what to do, I don't really want to be a publicist forever. And she said, agenting is a little more open, maybe you could look into being an agent. And that's how the whole thing started. But I had to kind of learn everything from scratch, because I was coming in not having been an assistant.
Yeah.
I basically just got a job at an agency. I'm like, you're an agent now, and I kind of had to build my list out of nothing.
Yeah, first off, publicists are like heroes.
I know, they're amazing. They get a lot.
I approach people, they don't use that. And just balancing all the demands, like the author's demands, the publisher's demand.
And you have to be very detail oriented too.
Oh, yeah.
That wasn't my forte, but yes.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta, start somewhere and learn the business.
I do think it was a good thing. It's, again, very unusual for an agent to have been a publicist. And I think, when I talked about that pipeline, you start with the author, you go to the agent, you go to the editor, and you're the publicist. And I think having worked at the end of the process gave me a different perspective when I went to start work at the beginning, because I would see how hard it was for books to get attention. I would see how hard the publicists worked. I would see what the media was responding to and not responding to. And that really shaped how I work with my authors. But also, I think what I try to do when I work with my authors is I'm their champion, I encourage them, I keep them pumped up, but I also try to, for example, authors get upset if they think they're not getting the best publicity possible. I think that I try to keep them realistic about the challenges, because I've done that job. I know how hard it is.
Well, here in Detroit, media outlets, they're treating that look after books and stuff like this is getting dwindling.
As a publicist, when I first started, it was the year 2000, and Detroit had a robust newspaper section, book section, and that was a place you can get book coverage. And it doesn't exist anymore here in Detroit, but in most cities. And in fact, in the past, it's so crazy, and book sections have been closed. They've been falling like dominoes for years, but just 3 weeks ago, the Washington Post, which was one of the last big book sections, closed their book section. And I think it says a lot that the Washington Post, of course, is owned by the same person who owns Amazon. And I think the fact that the person who owns Amazon thinks a book section isn't important gives one a sense of who actually champions books, which is independent booksellers, and why they're so important to support, but also, how books are valued sadly, by big tech companies.
Right. So maybe let's get rolling.
Yeah.
Why did you write?
I wrote the book for a couple of reasons, but part of it is the stuff about my own background and my own career isn't irrelevant to why I wrote the book, which is I had a really hard time finding my way professionally when I was younger. None of it felt intuitive to me. And publishing was really mysterious. Even for me, working within publishing as a young person, I often found it not intuitive, confusing. It was hard to figure out who did what and why, how things worked. I had to kind of figure it out myself. And because I had a very working class upbringing, I could have taken all these publishing courses you could take after college where you spend $20,000 and they teach you everything about publishing. And it wasn't an option for me. So yeah. Well, it helps get a publishing job. That's how you can become an assistant at an agency. So I saw how hard it was to get this information, and I didn't want to gatekeep it. But I also, I saw too that because I represent nonfiction, I was often asked questions about nonfiction publishing. And there are so many great books out there about publishing and about writing, but none of them are particular to nonfiction. So I'd be recommending books that saying things like, but this is about fiction, but it applies in this way, but it doesn't apply in that way. And I kept thinking, oh God, if only there were a book that helped walk a writer through a nonfiction writing career, that'd be so useful. And then I thought one day, I can write that book. I know exactly how to write that book. I know what I would put in it. I know what I get asked all the time. I know what I would tell people. And that's where the idea for the book came.
Cool. And let's see, there are several parts to it. Now, if somebody wants an agent, I was surprised to hear that agents usually find the writer.
Yeah, and this is particularly, this is, I think, one of the big things I wanted people to learn. So one way to find an agent is to research agents and to query them. That is, and I give lots of tips in the book about how to research different agents. One of the best places to research agents is in the acknowledgement section of their favorite book. So you make a big pile of this, and it's not books that are 30 years old, because the agents in those acknowledgement sections are dead. So it has to be published within the past 10 years. And you look, I'm writing a thriller. So here's my 10 favorite recent thrillers. You look at the acknowledgement section, and you'll see the agent thing, and that'll give you a sense of who is representing thrillers. But there's another side, another way to do it, and this is particularly true for nonfiction. A lot of my clients never queried me. So how did I find them? Well, I read their work somewhere. And with nonfiction, there's lots of different ways to get your work published, to get your work out there. You could have published essays, you could publish articles in literary magazines, and newspapers, and journals, and magazines. And I give lots of information in here on how to do that, how to pitch yourself. And I read those things all the time, as do my literary agent colleagues. So many of my clients, pretty early in their careers, published an essay somewhere, and I read it, and I loved it, and I tracked them down. I'm a good detective in that way, and found their email and said, hey, I really liked what you wrote. I'm a literary agent. If you're interested, if you want to write a book someday, let's talk. And many of those writers ended up becoming published book writers who've written best-selling and acclaimed books. But it started because they wrote an essay that they pitched themselves to the Atlantic, which, believe it or not, does take pitches over the transom. And I read something and reached out to them.
Now, I do a lot of pitching myself.
Yeah, it's not easy.
To get articles.
Yeah.
In,
it's not fun.
News.
Yeah.
But I was surprised, you give examples of pitches. I was surprised the detail that you gave, the amount. I always figured that reporters don't want to go into a lot of detail.
Yeah, so in the book itself, I wanted to show what actual pitches look like. So instead of making mock pitches, I just asked writers I know to show me pitches that worked. So I have a pitch that worked for the New York Times Magazine. I have a pitch that worked for a more literary journal called the Paris Review. And you'll see the pitches are pretty detailed. And I actually think that's a really good takeaway about, I think, and this is actually really true, I think, with even cover letters for when you're applying for a job. If you're ever hired for a job, you're going to get 30 cover letters that all kind of say the same thing. Like, I'm a hard worker.
Usual.
Yeah, and if nothing sticks, if you're pitching yourself as a writer, you're actually doing a bit of an audition. The letter itself, the pitch itself, is showing that you know how to write. So number one thing, it should be engagingly written. But number two, good writing drives in the detail. So I'm not saying be super long, but if you're pitched for a story that's a really good story, we should feel that the story is good in the pitch and you can give detail about it. So a bad pitch tends to be vague. Often it's just about themes. I get a lot of pitches that are, you know, in terms of query letters that are like, it's a grief memoir. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen this phrase. It's about love, loss, and memory. And that tells me nothing. But a good pitch is, you know, you get right into, okay, who did you lose? What did it make you feel? Who is the person?
Yeah.
And the pitches that I give examples for, but all the writing I give examples for is really rich in that kind of detail. What you like to read, what you like to read isn't, you know, sort of like, I'm going to read a book about love, loss, and memory. You want to read something that has something to grab onto. Yeah.
Well, yeah, what does it mean?
Yeah.
And
why should I care?
Yeah, I mean, people relate and react to that, and that does your job. And then, okay, so you find an agent, or you go to a query, and you have to book idea, and you write the famous book proposal.
Right, so that's another reason I wanted to do a book that's specifically about nonfiction, and it was in part to save a lot of writers time. So the number one thing to know about nonfiction is you don't sell it on full manuscript. So if you're writing a nonfiction book, you don't need to write the whole book before you sell it. Save yourself the time. You sell it on book proposal. And I get in very granular detail about what a book proposal looks like. I give actual examples, but it's about 40 pages. And usually you also have a sample chapter. And you're making an argument for the book, saying how it will be structured, you're saying when you are uniquely qualified to write it, you're saying what the market for the book might be. But that's how we sell nonfiction books. And it's its own particular genre. Again, the bad ones, like bad pitches, are really general and vague and read like a PowerPoint presentation. The good ones are a really great piece of writing, but it's short. It's really distilled, it's really condensed. It immediately takes you into what's exciting about the book.
Well, okay, I'll have a thought, I'll come back to it. Then you've got, qualification. The big word, platform.
Yeah, platform.
But, I guess maybe what you should talk more.
Platform
What
101,
a
yeah.
platform is.
Okay, so platform is a word that we use in the publishing industry. And it's a word that has a very nebulous definition, but my own definition is it's our kind of Orwellian term to explain what you are known for and how people would find out about you. And it's important to publishing, in nonfiction in particular, because if you are publishing a piece of nonfiction, and someone is saying, I'm an expert, you're saying, I know about this. So if I would say, you know, I have a really great idea for a finance book, I actually wouldn't be qualified to write such a book, because my main understanding of finance is I have a checking account. Like, I don't have any way to prove really much of anything about my expertise, or, you know, I have some thoughts about how to manage one's finances, but they're not, I don't have demonstrable expertise. So platform is in part saying, oh, actually, I'm a financial expert in these ways, and I can prove it. And I have this set of relationships or this institutional affiliation. Platform can also mean, and sometimes it, in its most reductive sense, means one social media platform. That's not its only meaning, but that can be a component as well. So often writers are advised to be on social media to help their platform. I try to explain that platform is much more than that, that it could be your in real life social network. It could be that you're writing a book about wine and you've been a sommelier in a small town for 30 years and you've managed to get that whole small town really excited about wine. That is your platform. It could be that you have these great relationships from years as a writing teacher, and therefore you have all these other writers who will support your work. All of these things that say, I take my craft and what I'm an expert in seriously, and I can prove it, and I perhaps also have means to promote my book. With narrative nonfiction, which is nonfiction that tells a story, often the platform is that you're a journalist or someone who has written about something and published on it. So usually, and I think this is an important thing to realize, is the biggest job you can get as a writer is a book deal. And I want to be honest that you kind of can't skip the steps. It's very hard to have the first job you get to be the biggest job. So if you are writing narrative nonfiction, nonfiction that tells a story, usually part of the way to qualify to get a book deal, so to speak, is to have published something on the subject. And that's why I talk a lot about publishing essays, because you're saying, hey, like I'm writing about Arab American history in Dearborn. If you've never published anything on it, it's really hard to get a publisher to invest lots of money in you to sell that book if you've never actually done any kind of professionalized writing on it. But that doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means there are a couple of steps you have to take. Just like you wouldn't apply for a job running a company who's never worked as an assistant in that field. You can't apply for the job of selling a nonfiction book if you've never done other kind of professionalized. Yeah. Although I would say with fiction, it's totally different. With fiction, you could be a nobody with a great idea about like dragons and romance, which is like what's selling right now, and write that book and go with God and you'll be great. So one of the reasons I wanted to write about nonfiction is there is this kind of difference in how we evaluate what's a viable project.
Yeah, I just wanted to, and it kind of drove me that you don't necessarily have to have a social media.
No, and a lot of my writers don't, and a lot of my writers prove their expertise in other ways. I work with a lot of academics, for example. They're not on social media at all. They just know a lot about one thing, and they're able to write about it in a compelling way. And I'm able to say, hey, this person really knows a lot about this. Or with memoir, they've had an amazing life story. They're able to talk about it in a compelling way. With memoir, there's some exceptions to the platform rules, different personal story. But yeah, social media is not the most important thing.
I heard you have a book deal for Jane Austen's great.
Oh, that's one of my favorite books that I'm working on. It's not out yet. This is actually a really great story about, I think also about how to think about social media. So I should say I have a friend here that I went to graduate school with. So he's story is for him because he remembers when I was a 20-something in graduate school, but I was studying with Jane Austen. That's what my obsession is outside of work is Jane Austen. So now I'm a grown-up literary agent and I'm on Instagram, and I recommend, instead of thinking of social media as a way to promote yourself only, it can be a way to find out about other people. I think that's a much better way to think about it. So I'm on social media, and the reason I'm there, I don't love being on social media, but I'm there to talk about the writers I work on and what I'm interested in, so other people know about the writers that I work on, and so aspiring writers can find me and find out about me. So I'm on social media, and this academic who is a specialist in 18th and 19th century literature, who previously just wrote academic books for other academics, started to research what literary agents represent other academics, represent academics who do crossover books. And he Googles, finds some, and he starts following a bunch of us on social media. And he follows me, because I represent a bunch of academics. And he sees one day that I post something on Instagram about Jane Austen, because I love Jane Austen. I don't know, I was thinking an Austen movie or something. I'm like, okay. And this professor makes a note of that. Then I post that I'm going to go to a conference. And this guy wrote to me, he's like, hey, I'm going to be at this conference, and I'm writing a book about Jane Austen. And I thought, oh, well, this is actually of interest to me. I think it's a book for a general readership.
Yeah.
We get together, we have coffee. Long story short, he pitches me his book. His book was about how, when he was in his 40s, the man that he thought was going to marry him dumped him for a 20-something ballet dancer. And in the process, he lost his home and spent a year couch surfing. And all he had was like his luggage full of the collected works of Jane Austen. And that's like what got him through the year. The book is called My Jane Austen Breakup Album. And I came up with the title, I'm very proud of it. And it's his memoir, but also a rereading of Jane Austen, as he put it, as a middle-aged gay debutante, and trying to learn, like, how did I end up in this situation where I'm always falling in love with the wrong man, always getting dumped? What can Aunt Jane teach me? And what he did, he doesn't have a big social media following. He just used Instagram to find the right person to reach out and make the connection with me. And then he had a great book idea. And because he had this background as a Jane Austen scholar, he was really well qualified to write this book. We sold it at auction to Penguin Press. We also sold it in the UK. And it was, the perfect person, the perfect book, but then he found the perfect agent. And that was just, he did really good research.
Well,
and a great book title, that was me.
Oh, well, yeah. Very catchy. I mean, it's not something people remember. But my point is the memoir doesn't have to be on black.
That's a really important thing too, is I think a lot of memoir pitches I get are, I had the craziest life, and it'll be, it starts with your birth and it ends with wherever you are now. A lot of really good memoir and successful memoir is just a section of a life of life, and it's taken an interesting take on the life, and is perhaps doing something surprising with a little part of your life, maybe even teaching us something from this little part of your life. I think that could be a more creative way to think about memoir, and there's a readership for that.
And also, my wife loves Jane Austen too, but she looks at it differently, like behavior.
Yeah.
Like way to behave.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's actually a whole subgenre of books about Jane Austen that are all about learning manners from Jane Austen. But the Jane Austen I'll never get sick of books inspired by Jane Austen.
Oh no, my wife loves.
But I mean, actually, my author who's writing my Jane Austen breakup album, a lot of what he talks about is what he learned about dating from Jane Austen. He just learned it too late. Like, if I learned sooner about, what makes for a trustworthy man, or what to look for in a partner, maybe I wouldn't have ended up in such dire straits. And I think that's something I can relate to.
I love the name of chapter 5.
Oh, I can't even remember what chapter 5 is.
Well, it's the mission.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's actually whenever I do a reading, that's the little section that I read.
Well, I could relate in a way. I used to get a lot of allergy shots.
Oh, yeah,
So
so,
it's not.
um, in this section on the submission process,
Yeah.
I'll read it to you.
Yeah.
So the submission process is when an agent takes your book out on submission for publishers to consider. And, I'm gonna read you how this part opens, because it'll give you a sense of the tone I was trying to get in the book, but also I think of what it's like, I think, to be a writer. The submission process, or this is where it hurts. When I was little, I hated having my blood drawn. Nurse after exasperated nurse tried to reassure me that it didn't hurt, and I would be just fine, which is an easy thing to say when you are the one holding the needle. The standard advice was to close my eyes and to be over in a second. I inevitably howled. Of course, it wasn't the pain that hurt, but the anticipation of it. As a budding hypochondriac, one of the reasons I spent my childhood getting my blood drawn, my worry was that a routine medical test would reveal all the things that were wrong with me, and one of the things was assuredly my imminent death. I eventually met my morbid match when I got a phlebotomist who gave it to me straight. First, she told me she loved drawing blood. I couldn't believe someone would enjoy an act I found so unpleasant, but her delight in blood and needles was a good kind of infection. Second, she narrated every part of the procedure. Now I am making a tourniquet. This helps you find a vein. Now I have found a vein. Looks like you have a good one. Now take a deep breath. This is where it hurts. At the end, she gave me the rest of the sticker and asked if I'd like to see the vial of my own blood. When I said yes, she brandished the vial with glee. Seeing my blood in a plastic tube suddenly made the procedure seem both miraculous and reassuringly routine. I didn't get over my dislike of having my blood drawn, but having the process handled by someone who enjoyed it, who appreciated its awe and saw the importance of explaining this mechanism, made my fear manageable. You see where I'm going here. The submission process is extremely unpleasant for authors, and this is not an irrational response. To extend my metaphor, you are sending a sample of one of the most intimate parts of yourself out into the world for evaluation and diagnosis. You don't know what the result might be, but when you really want to sell a book, learning no one wants to publish that book can feel like a fate, nearly as catastrophic as imminent death. Of course you are terrified. I am a bit like a sanguinous phlebotomist.
Yeah, that's a very good metaphor, because at least to my understanding, you give of yourself to write something.
Yeah.
You have to tell this story.
And not only that, if you decide to publish, which is different than just writing in your journal, if you decide to make it public, you are inherently making yourself vulnerable. And what I tried to show in the book is you can't avoid that. That's part of it. So insecurity is baked in, and probably feeling bad occasionally is going to be baked in. The highs are really high. So you can't lie. There's going to be lows. You're going to get embarrassed maybe, or feel bad, or feel vulnerable, or feel self-conscious. So what I tried to do throughout, now having worked with so many writers, to say, yeah, this is normal, and there's a reason you're feeling this way. Luckily, the good part of publishing is once you start working with other people, say an editor, say an agent, you have other people on your team. So some of those feelings can be shared, and the agent has a bit of a remove. So I actually get quite upset when my authors are upset, but my job as a parent is like not show it, and to be there for them and to like guide them through it, say this is normal, or maybe you're overreacting and we'll get through this together.
Yeah.
But you're going to react strongly because you're compelled to do this thing that is very hard and has a high chance of not working, and has a public aspect of it that is going to open you up for some criticism and rejection. And that's just part of it.
Yeah, you buried yourself. You won these terms.
Yeah, and it's okay. But I also think that if you are trying to get published, it really helps, I think, in the process to be aware of the other people that you're dealing with, that they also have to navigate a difficult system. There may be reasons why they're slow to get back to you that have nothing to do with you, and I talk about what those reasons might be in the book.
Yeah.
That it's a hard industry. We're all doing it because we love it. And to be, you know, patient and gracious, and know that a lot of the stuff that feels really upsetting and really personal probably isn't.
Oh, yeah, yeah, when dealing with people, I make sure to say thank you, and,
It's so appreciated.
like if people send me, A or Cs, I say thank you.
I really appreciate when people are like that.
Yeah, or just, and be professional, if, okay, you want something, get it to them as soon as possible.
Well, I also think that, those outside of the publishing industry don't realize how small it is. It's pretty small. So when someone is nice to deal with, an author is nice to deal with, the word gets around. We sometimes use this phrase, good literary citizens. So someone who is always gracious, always thankful, doesn't just promote themselves, but promotes other writers, comes to an event and is present and kind, word gets around. So it's really important to think about that. If you're, you know, getting to know other writers, getting to know editors, getting to know agents, they'll talk to each other, and you want to be a person that people want to work with.
Sounds like the library world.
Like that, it's a small world.
Yeah.
Nobody does it for the money. Librarian for the money.
Yeah.
So you want it, word gets around.
Yeah, good. Okay, well, what was this submission process like for you?
I am not typical. I'm a literary agent. So, I have an agent. People ask me that if I agent my own book. No way. There's no way I would agent my own book. Because only a fool has himself for a lawyer.
Yeah.
So my agent is a colleague of mine at the Gurna company. And, I know enough about the process to know I didn't want to see the rejection. I didn't need to hear it. I just wanted to hear the good news. And, we had a lot of interest in the book, which was great. And I found a good home for it. But I think that it proved my theory that because I knew what to expect, I knew how long it would take, I knew how the process usually goes, I wasn't that anxious. And it just helped to be familiar with everything. So nothing was a surprise to me. But I'm not representative, you know, I would help maybe it's like if a doctor goes in and gets surgery, it's like, surgery.
Did you have a difficult time in, writing it, or?
Writing it helped.
Even though you know.
I think you realize how hard it was to write a book, right? I mean, God, so many things were hard about it. It sounds like it'd be easy because I know everything, but that's not the case. I did 60-some interviews for the book too, so there's a lot of synthesizing of information. You know, what I couldn't have fully anticipated without doing it is that I work in publishing, which means I work with a whole team of people. It's a team sport. Where with writing, it's very solitary, and it's on you to get it done each day. And the only person who really suffers if you don't get it done is me, and there's nobody to report to other than myself. And you feel that pressure. But I did learn a writing hack, if you will, from having written the book, which is I spent the first 6 months stuck on the first chapter. And there's a chapter in here about education, about MFA programs, journalism school, and then being self-educated. And I knew it was really important, and I couldn't write it. And every day I woke up and felt horrible. And then finally one day I thought, I'm going to write the easiest chapter first.
Sure.
And I wrote actually the chapter that I just read to you, that was that chapter. I love the human submission. Like, I know I'm going to really have fun writing about the submission process. Everybody hates it. I love it. And I had this metaphor I wanted to use, and I knew it was fun to write about. So I wrote that chapter, and I wrote it like in 3 days. And then I felt really good about myself. And then I thought, I'll write easiest to hardest. So I made a list of what I thought would be the easiest chapters, and I worked my way up to the hardest chapter. So by the time I got to the hardest chapter, I felt very comfortable writing chapters. I knew what it felt like to write a chapter. I felt confident. And it's completely changed my writing process. And I was having fun with it. And I wrote the chapters I felt were fun and funny first. And then I was able to incorporate, the book's funny, so I incorporate humor in it.
Oh, yeah.
And, but I had to get confidence to do it. And I think it's also why I so believe that you have to practice writing a lot to get ready to write a book. but even in the practice of writing the book, I couldn't run the marathon first, you know, I had to do it step by step. And so by the end, I really felt great. But but the first 6 months, I was like, I'm not going to write this book. It's going to be so humiliating. I'm going to pay the money back. And I felt all those horrible, vulnerable things. And it was bad. I also only ate, my building at the time had a vending machine. And I was getting divorced in the middle of writing my book. I was getting divorced. I didn't have the energy to cook. My building had a vending machine. And I ate gummy worms for dinner with Yoo-hoo, because it was my vending machine, every night for like 3 months. So I suffered too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
So, but
Sorry about that.
We decided to die right in the middle. And it was full when I started. You never know what these. And be very patient.
Okay.
Yeah, to bring you right up to the topic of that chapter, so now it's interesting that a great advice that you share about the Master of Fine Arts program, where what fits you, what is your purpose, what is your
I don't often get asked by people who want to be writers if they should take classes, if maybe they should get a master's of fine arts in creative writing. And I'm quite agnostic about that. I don't think there's a definite right or wrong. And I give examples too in the book of people who completely skipped, who didn't have any kind of formal education in writing and became very successful writers. And I talk about how they were able to develop as writers outside of a formal system of education. But I try to reverse the question about MFA programs to get writers to ask themselves, in what conditions do I produce good work? Is it in relationship to other people? Is it by myself? Do I need a lot of time by myself? Do I work better in a city? Do I work better if I have a day job and I'm balancing writing at night? And to think about that as you're thinking about whether or not you want to go to graduate school, so you find a program that fits, or you decide, I'm not even a school person, and this isn't a good fit for me. So that way you're not just deciding, oh, I'm getting an MFA because that's the next logical step.
and going back to platform and the qualifications, it's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing.
I think it's certainly not necessary for getting an agent or getting a book deal. It can be a way to get a foot in the door. But I also think, and I talk about this too, that in any writing system you're in, there's a tendency to think the networking you want to do, I think networking is important.
Oh, yeah.
Is networking up. Like I'm going to go to an MFA program so I can meet a professor who's going to refer me to their agent, or I'm going to come to an event like this and meet the agent, which you should do, and come and say hi to me and shake my hand and talk to me. But I also think it's really important, say you're in a writing class, to meet your other writers, to meet peers, because that's your real system of support. And to meet the other people in this room are here for a reason. Obviously, the people here are interested in writing. Those are the people you should also try to meet. So I give examples in my book of one of my most successful clients is this writer, Clint Smith. And two of his best friends have become also incredibly successful writers. Kaveh Akbar wrote Martyr, and Eve Abdur-Rakib, who wrote There's Always This Year. They've always become like best-selling, award-winning writers. People see them together out and about, and they think they were always successful best-selling writers. No, they became friends going to lots of different writing events when they were young and just meeting other writers. And they all became well-known together over the course of many long years. And now they support each other's work. They read each other's work. They're part of this group of friends. But it was years in the making. And that was just through being out and about and being engaged in the literary community. They're all also, two of them are Midwesterners, and they were outside the whole New York literary ecosystem. And they would just, they keep seeing each other at like poetry readings, and they became friends, and then, supported each other and eventually became very successful. But it was through this kind of community with each other. So I think with MFA programs too, if you join one, think about making friends with your fellow students, because in 20 years, those students, you're all going to be writing together still, hopefully, and supporting each other.
Yeah. I'll talk for a while, but I wanted to, sort of bring things to a close. You have to, people do an exercise, book is published, so like you take
Yeah.
a sheet of paper and write five.
I have a little exercise. Yeah.
I think that's good.
Thank you. So my exercise is, I think it's a really good use exercise for so many big things in life that you're excited about, that you might risk disappointment and things you can't control. Is I make writers, when their book's about to come out a list of 5 things they hope will happen. And I tell them, realistically, you're gonna get 2. But what are your 5 things? And that way, you're not always like, when's this gonna happen? Like, oh, when is Oprah gonna call?
Yeah.
And she's probably not gonna call. But what are the 5 things? And I could give like a couple examples. For one of my writers, she just really wanted an event in her hometown. And we worked really hard, and we had an event in her high school gym, and everyone in her town came out. And that was, so she was like, that's what I really want. And then another writer of mine who's primarily a doctor, he doesn't get to know a lot of other writers in his work. And he's like, I just want to meet other writers. And he really thought about that. He's like, I'm going to say yes to opportunities that get me to talk to other writers. I really did want to go on book tour because I like public speaking, and I wanted to meet people and be out in the world. So I was like, I'll go anywhere. Like, I will get on a plane. I'll come to Dearborn. Like, I'll do it. So I've been on the book tour for like 3 months. That was not for everyone. Like, I'll pay for it. I'll pay for my own flight. And I knew that was important to me, you know. And I thought about it too. What's important to me? And I'm not going to get all the things, but if I get a couple of the things, then that's enough. And that has to be enough.
Well, yeah, because not every book is a bestseller.
Most aren't.
And I guess my next question is, how many books make a profit?
The majority of books do not.
Yeah.
The majority of books do not make money. And that's just a reality. And when you work in the industry, you see how many copies sell of books, and often it's quite modest. Books where the writer wrote an amazing book and works really hard to promote it. So you can't do it if you think selling a lot of copies is your goal, because that's the hardest thing to control.
Yeah.
You know, it has to come from some other source of affirmation. And if you sell a lot of copies, that's great. If you make money, that's great. And I couldn't have a roof over my head if there weren't a way to make money off books. There is a way to make money off books. I'm able to have a job. Sure. But if you go into it just for that, or for selling copies, it's not a good bet.
Well, that's why it exercise.
Yeah.
You have people do.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's actually a good thing to think about. You know, if you're planning your wedding, what are the 5 things I hope will happen? It's probably just 2 of them. And that's enough.
Well,
like, you want to have a great marriage, but you're like, you want to have a great marriage, but also like, the cake might not be good, and maybe the video's not great, but at least you had a great dance.
Okay, yeah.
You know, like, I think that's like a healthy way to go through. Yeah, you get 2 things.
When you say that.
Yeah.
Good, so, all right, let's start with questions. People, if you're in the audience, let her rip. Do you have questions? Hi.
I have actually many questions, but I'll start with this one. If 31 was too old to be an editor, how old is too old to, say, publish a long form essay?
There's no too old. And in fact, there's a really great new-ish magazine, online only, by a Substack called Oldster.
I just read about that.
It's great. It's a friend of mine started it, a friend of a friend. And we always have these amazing stories about writers who are older, break out when they're older. Also, I'm going to be frank and say, I think publishing sometimes targets younger readers a bit too aggressively, but older readers are the ones buying books. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's a place where actually we can do more, because just in terms of book buying, man, I see it. No, that's too old to write, too old to publish an essay. It's not a thing. You're not too old. You have my word.
Yeah.
You're maybe to be an assistant at a publishing house. You might maybe, both aged out of that.
So a follow-up question, have you seen the show Younger and?
Oh, yeah,
anything-
my stepfather loves to tell me about things that happened when I'm younger, and then he asks me if they've happened to me. So I've never actually, I've watched like 1 or 2 episodes, but I've got
really?
many recaps from my stepfather, yeah. Yeah, I felt like I lived it, yeah.
Did they get anything right?
I've only read a little bit about it and seen some episodes. The one thing they get right is that the industry can be ageist about breaking in. But they kind of make it seem, when I think of a show that where everyone has, sorry. Oh, there's my mic on it, I'm so sorry. When I gave the example of, it makes it seem like everyone has the same exact job. That is what I was thinking of. There's a really funny essay that you can Google, that it was in the New York Times by Sloane Crosley, who worked in publishing and now is an author, but she writes about Younger and what it's like to watch Younger as a publishing professional. And she's like, they all have the same job. It's like they made it like one Frankenstein job of editor, publicist, author. It does. It's like if you ever watched a legal show with a lawyer, like, oh my God, this isn't true. So yeah, it's fun to watch, but it's not realistic. We all do live in Brooklyn, so I believe they live in Brooklyn in that show, and it is a little ageist for starting out.
There was the name of the magazine, somebody online was just wanted you to repeat that. No.
Oh, the name of the magazine?
The online only magazine.
Ulster.
Oldster.
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 Okay, thank you.
There was a big write-up in the New York Times. It's a really great outlet.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, good.
So since writing a full manuscript of a popular science self-help work, which I've done,
Okay.
is not the best way to sell it, because you don't, what I've read and what you're saying is that you don't write the whole thing.
Great, yeah.
You give an idea, you do
Proposal.
yes, so you do that whole 9 yards before you do the full.
Right.
Writing the book. So since that is the case, is writing and then self-publishing easier these days than it was in years past? And if so, how does that affect, on a personal note for you, is it easier to go that route these days, for many reasons online?
I'm not an expert in self-publishing, so I wouldn't say that. And self-publishing is much more of a phenomenon with fiction. So right now, there's a self-publishing boom with genre fiction, with romance, romantasy, sci-fi. In fact, one of my agency's biggest clients initially self-published. So this is, I would actually say, if you're writing in genre fiction, self-publish. And often publishers come to self-published writers and offer them traditional deals. With nonfiction, it's most nonfiction bestsellers. Self-help's a little different, but traditional publishing is still the primary route because of the publicity and marketing that comes with being traditionally published. Because a lot of people find out about nonfiction through media coverage, and that's what a publisher can help with, and through marketing. So if you want to self-publish and you want to do nonfiction, you really have to think, how am I going to get the word out? And am I also going to be able to pay for publicity and marketing? Where if you give quote a traditional publisher, they pay you for the book and they offer those services. I think one of the reasons that self-publishing works so well for genre fiction is people who love genre fiction, they know what they like, they know where to find it. It's on Amazon. Like you're like, I read this romantasy, I'm going to read that one. With fiction nonfiction that's topical, a big part of the publisher's job is helping you find those readers, selling it to libraries. Libraries don't, unless it's fiction, they're not going to take self-published nonfiction. So you're probably not.
Not.
Or having, yeah. So it's not, so it's still, traditional publishing is still really important for nonfiction, I would say. And it hasn't, self-publishing hasn't negatively affected the nonfiction.
Is that true for memoir?
I think similarly, you can self-publish a memoir, and that memoir is weird, because it's kind of like fiction and kind of like nonfiction in that, I think the important thing to think about with memoir is if you're writing it for yourself. A lot of people do write memoirs for themselves to process something. And then I think self-publishing is a great route. But if you're publishing memoir because you know there's a clear audience for it, I would urge you to try it first to find an agent and a publisher, but also so much of so many things that become successful memoirs, they really do start out as personal essays. And I talk a lot about this in the book. So right now, the biggest best-selling memoir is Bellbird and Strangers, which is great. It's a great memoir. And that started out as a modern love essay. And it went, it was super popular. An agent reached out to her. She got a book deal. Now it was the #1 New York Times bestseller. And she'd never been published before, but she wrote this one great modern love, and it all spun out from there. And I sold a memoir a couple of years ago. Again, it was an essay that I read. Many of our most popular memoirs that Kerner has wrapped, someone wrote one essay that got published somewhere, and that's what created a condition for them to be able to do a book deal.
Do you ever look on like Substack?
Yeah. I mean, I'm on Substack, so I
Okay.
love Substack, yeah.
And people, like, if I wrote a memoir about raising my child with ADHD. And so, like, someone recommended me to go on Substack and just put maybe small snippets of things that I've done.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, but I think also, it's related to how I recommend thinking about social media. Substack isn't just a place to promote your own work, it's a place to meet other writers,
Mhm.
and meet other writers who are writing in related.
Right.
And like that, so you think about using the ecosystem for that. So it's not just about, if someone's gonna find me, like people will find you if you're finding other people and you're cross-promoting and you're working with each other. That's the benefit of it. And so that's part of the work, yeah. But I'm a big fan of Substack and also, any kind of newsletter, that kind of self-publishing, I think is great. And I think it's democratizing in a good way.
Well, we gotta sadly wrap things up, but I wanted to ask one more thing. Is there something that you didn't put in the book, but wanted to?
Oh my God. There's something I didn't put in the book but wanted to. I can't say that. By the end, I wanted not read it. I kept being like, oh, I have to add this, I have to add that. Every time I thought of something else to add, oh, damn it, I have to add that. I actually wish if I were to rewrite the book, I would put more about self-publishing because I get asked about it a lot. And I would put more about Substack and newsletters, and because that ecosystem is changing so quickly. And I get asked about AI a lot, and I'm deeply, deeply anti-AI. So I would put my AI rant in there, and give you my reasons for why it is detrimental to your work as a thinker and a writer and a reader. But that'll be the manifesto that I write next.
Very good.
Your memoir.
My memoir,
Yeah,
my anti-AI memoir. I'm not gonna write a memoir. My life's very boring.
So, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
We will be glad to sign books, and have a quick conversation,